Cricket, the gentleman's game. While around for more than a century, it hasn't picked up much traction in the United States. Here at the Yankee Cricketer, I'm trying to change that. By breaking down the game, explaining it piece by piece, this South African American hopes to ignite a desire among my compatriots to begin to follow the second most popular sport on the planet. So that one day, even though you may not fully understand why two players would want to play a game for 5 days, you may at least begin to appreciate it. So we will break down the game, begin to understand the rules and strategy, and analyze current headlines as well as decade-old controversies. All of that and more coming up. Welcome back for episode 3 of the Yankee Cricketer podcast, and in this episode we're going to take a little bit of a deep dive into batting and bowling. What does that look like? Run scoring, strategy surrounding both those phases of the game, and the different types of wickets or outs that can be taken, different ways that batters can get out or batsmen can get out. And then just looking at some news from around the world in the world of cricket, Indian Premier League action, English county cricket action, and some news from the international stage as well. So all that and more coming up. But first, let's just start with a quick overview of something I know I've touched on before, but we'll go over it again. Run scoring, the ways that you can score runs in cricket, and then kind of what good scores look like for teams and for individual batsmen. So in the game of cricket, you've got a few different ways that you can score runs, and I think in the first episode we touched on them very briefly as we were racing through a lot of different information, so we're going to recap that quickly here. The main way that batsmen score runs, obviously, is just hitting the ball and crossing, right? Because there's two batsmen, one at each end of the pitch, that strip in the middle of the field. There's one at each end, and so if a batsman hits the ball and they don't think a fielder's going to pick it up in time to get them out or to hit the wickets before they get in safe at the other end, then they'll call and they'll say, yeah, I think we can run. And they'll cross over and then be safe on the opposite side of that pitch, right? And if they think maybe they can do two, maybe they'll run twice. So they'll cross once, cross again, and kind of be back where they started. And you get one run for each time you cross. You could run 3, you could run 4, you could run 5. There's no limit on how many you can run. You self-impose a limit based on how far you think you can run without getting out. Similar to in baseball, if you were to drive one to the wall, do you go for 1 base or 2? It's kind of a similar calculation in cricket. Do we go for 1 run or 2? Do we think we hit it far enough that we can get 2 or even 3 before a fielder gets there and throws the ball back? And so batsmen are constantly communicating with each other in between overs. If you remember, an over is an allotment of 6 legal deliveries bowled by one bowler from one end of the pitch. So in between overs, right, they switch ends, the bowlers do. So the one bowler will bowl from one end, and then the next bowler bowls his over from the other end. So while they're the second bowler is getting ready and the field is all switching because everything's switching sides, right, batsmen will often have a discussion in the middle of the pitch about what their strategy is going to look like for the next over. And then they're in constant communication about whether they think they can run or not. So every time a batsman hits the ball, he'll say yes or no, and then they'll come through. I don't want to say often there's mix-ups, but there are mix-ups that occur often enough where one batsman is going full steam and the other batsman's like, no, we can't make it, and then someone just gets run out, just out of nowhere. And so we'll talk about run-outs and different kinds of ways to get out in a minute. But just, thinking about that when you think about scoring runs, it's hitting it and running, and then of course boundaries are the other ways that batsmen score runs. They score runs by hitting the ball over the boundary, right? The boundary rope at the edge of the field. If they hit it over that boundary without a bounce, just like a home run, you'll get 6 runs. You don't have to run back and forth 6 times. You just get those 6 runs. And if it does bounce or roll or whatever before it goes over the boundary, you'll get 4 runs. And so often batsmen towards the end of the innings, if they're playing a 20 over game or a 50 over game, they might try and increase the rate of scoring. And so you'll see a lot more boundaries, or just in 20 over cricket in general, you'll see a lot of boundaries consistently throughout the game just because it's such a short format. And so a good score, batsmen, you may see videos or pictures of batsmen raising their bat and saluting the crowd. They'll do that every 50 runs just in celebration. So 50 is a good milestone. 100 is a big milestone. And then anything beyond that is an incredible milestone. In 20 over cricket, hitting 100 is very difficult because you don't have much time. So hitting 100 in 50 over cricket is a big deal, whereas hitting 100 in test match cricket is also a big deal, but maybe it's not as big a deal, or I guess it's just more common in test cricket. Not that it's not as big a deal, it's just more common because you have much more time to bat in test match cricket. So in test match cricket, the highest score is 400 runs by Brian Lara in international test cricket. And so, yeah, he scored 400 on his own. Obviously, that match ended in a draw, but he did put on 400 runs, and he wasn't out at the end of the game. So they never got him out, and he got 400 runs in one innings. Not even like, oh, they batted once and then they batted again, and in total he got 400. It was in one, just one go he got 400. You'll see 200s, every now and then. 300s are pretty rare. The list of people who have gotten a triple century is pretty small. I would say maybe a dozen people ever. And then 200s are a lot more common. And then 100s in test match cricket are even more common. In one-day cricket, batsmen will get hundreds relatively often. Only in the last 15 years, I think, have batsmen ever gotten a 200 in one-day cricket, but just with the advent of the 20-over game and innovations to batting and more aggressive players coming through the ranks and being better at scoring quicker, 200s have happened at least a few times in 50-over cricket, and I think will continue to in the future. But there again, I think there's only 3 or 4 guys that have done it. So yeah, hundreds are far more common. And then in 20 over cricket, getting 40, 50, 60 is good because it's a short format, but also it's more about the rate of scoring. It's not just how much did you score in a 20 over game, because if you scored 70 runs but it took you 70 balls to do it, your team's not going to be very happy because it took you too long. You needed to get that 70 in 40 balls, and then that's good, So there's always kind of a balance between how many runs did you score and how fast did you score it. But also, like we mentioned last time, the reason we started talking about strategy and how it pertains to the pitch and conditions is because those scores are all relative. Yes, 100 is always a good score. 50 is always a decent start, a good score. But it all depends on the pitch, because on some pitches, getting 100 is almost impossible. And on another pitch, getting 100 may be pretty easy depending on the conditions. And so not all hundreds are made equal, but not all 50s are made equal, and not all 200s are made equal, because it's all about the conditions. But that being said, in general, batsmen look to get 50, get 100. Those are the milestones that they're looking for. And for teams in the different formats, I think I mentioned this before, but teams generally in 20 over cricket are looking for somewhere between 160 to 200 plus runs in an innings, and in 50 over game usually somewhere between 280 to 350 at least is what they're looking for. And then in a test match, in one innings, it varies because the pitch changes so much over the course of 5 days. But in general, you probably want something 300 plus in your first innings to feel good about about what you were doing. 300 to 400, 350 plus, you're probably feeling really good in Test cricket. 400, feeling great. But again, it depends on the pitch. If the pitch is like a road, it's flat, it's dry, it's easy to hit. 400 may not even be close to enough. Whereas if it's low and slow and hard to hit, maybe 250 looks insurmountable. So in Test match cricket, it varies a lot as to what a good score is, and you really only figure out what a good score is once both teams have batted and you see kind of how they both play the conditions, and you can say, okay, wow, that 250 looked bad, but now that I've seen the other team bat, that 250 looks like it's going to win the game. So that being said, those are kind of just some benchmarks that you can have in your mind as to what a good score looks like. If you ever come across a cricket score, or you find one in the paper or online somewhere and you see, oh, a cricket score, let's see, does this team look like they're doing well in this Test match? Or, wow, that team won a 20-over game and they only scored 130 runs. That's incredible. Kind of having an understanding of what's good and what's not. That being said, moving on to batting strategy and just kind of what batsmen are looking to do in different formats of the game, and how they're strategizing and what they're thinking about. And if you're a batsman and you're watching, or if you're watching someone bat, what you can be looking for. Again, it's dependent on the format, because in a 20-over game, batsmen will be far more aggressive. They'll be coming out looking for runs from the get-go, whereas in a Test match, the opening batsman will come out. Opening batsmen are the first two batsmen. They're referenced as openers. They're called openers or opening batsmen. But the openers will often try and just block it out in a Test match, just get a feel for the pitch and see what it's doing, and then go from there. So the strategy, if you're watching a batsman in a match, you'll often see them you may see them when they come out to bat, they'll first take their guard. They'll kind of ask the umpire, they'll line up their bat and ask the umpire for a certain position. So it's interesting, they'll hold their bat kind of to the ground and line it up with one of the wickets, and they'll ask the umpire, like, hey, is this middle stump or the middle wicket? And umpire will look and be like, yeah, that looks like your bat's lined up with the middle wicket. And then often batsmen will make a mark on their little crease there with their boot, and then that's kind of where they'll line up their feet with that mark somehow, just so that they're comfortable with, where they're standing, and that they're covering all their bases and they're covering, their wickets. Different batsmen ask for different, marks. Some will ask for, the outside, one of the outside wickets, or the wicket closest to their legs, or they'll just line up in different places depending on what's most comfortable for them. But then when the bowler's running in, the batsman is trying to identify how he's holding the ball to try and get some information as to what kind of a ball he's going to bowl. And then you may see batsmen as well, right as the bowler is about to let go of the ball, they may start moving. And because batsmen are not limited to a batter's box, they can move wherever they want. They can run all the way down the pitch if they want, but it's just hard to hit the ball if you're running all the way down the pitch. But often against like spin bowlers who are a little bit slower, you may see batsmen take 2 or 3 steps down the pitch and just try and whack the ball out of the ground. And the reason they do this is because for spin bowlers, when the ball hits the ground, it's going to spin and it's going to do something. And if they don't really want to figure out what the ball is going to do, if you kind of take 2 or 3 steps quickly down the pitch and you hit it right as it bounces, or even before it bounces, then it doesn't even matter which way it's spinning, because if you hit it as soon as it bounces, it doesn't really matter. You can just give it a wallop and you don't really have to think about which way it's going to spin or how high it's going to bounce or anything like that. So you may see that against some slower bowlers. The risk with that is you're not safe, right? You're not behind your crease, which is your kind of safe zone, if you will. Your bat or part of your body needs to be on the ground behind that crease line for you to be safe. And so when you do run down the pitch a little bit, if you miss the ball and the wicketkeeper takes it and hits the wickets with it before you can get your bat back over that line or part of your body back over that line, you will be out. So there's always a risk reward with that. So sometimes the bowler might last minute see the batsman advancing and might just fire a quick one wide, so the batsman can't reach it, and quick so that he can't get back in time. And then the wicketkeeper will, collect the ball and hit the wickets with it and run them out, or stump them. That's another way a batsman can get out, is getting stumped, which is essentially like a run out, but the batsmen weren't actually running. It's just the wicketkeeper getting the batsman who is facing the ball out because he was out of his crease. You may also see batsmen favoring one side versus another. So in baseball, you will have a batter who can hit one way and maybe not the other so well. So they may be able to hit to the opposite field, but they can't pull it, or vice versa. Usually I think it's the opposite. Batters are better at pulling it, and they can't go opposite field. And it's similar in cricket. Batsmen all have preferences. They like the balls in certain areas. They like hitting, away from their body. They like hitting it when it's coming right at their body. They like playing certain shots, right? Depending on how the batsman hits the ball, they're all called different. They're all called shots, right? When you hit the ball, you play a shot to hit the ball, and every shot has a different name, and every shot is a variation of a shot that that someone knows of. So even if you see something that doesn't really look like a shot you've seen before, it's probably some sort of a variation of another shot. And so there's all the names, and we'll probably get into that in a later episode, looking at a lot of the different names for different shots. But it's hard to know the names of the shots without knowing the field positions, because a lot of the names of the shots are talking about playing the ball toward a part of the field. And so if you don't know the fielding positions, then you won't understand why is a cover drive called a cover drive. Why is a leg glance called a leg glance if you don't know what leg side and offside are. So I think we'll table that one until next episode, when we talk about field settings, field strategy, and stuff like that. But needless to say, there are plenty of shots, plenty of types of shots. Think of it as like kind of a different swing, I guess. In baseball, you can swing a slightly different way. You can shorten your swing or things like that to try and get the ball into different areas. And so that would be kind of like playing a different shot in cricket. But because you can play the ball 360 in cricket, there's a myriad of shots, ramp shots, pull shots, drives, cuts, glances, hooks. I mean, there's everything. Sweeps, reverse sweeps. And then variations of each and every one of those, depending on when you play it. Do you play it early? Do you play it late? And so depending on when you play the shot, how you play the shot, it will go to different parts of the field. And so, that's part of the batting strategy, is knowing, well, what shots am I good at? Also, looking at the field placements to say, well, I'm good at this shot. I like this shot. This bowler likes bowling it in these areas. And then looking at the field and saying, here's a gap between two fielders. And so I need to wait on the ball a little bit and pound it through that gap. Or I need to get on this early and kind of hit it really early and get it through this gap over here. And kind of knowing where the gaps are in the field. Because if you're going to try and hit it over the top, it doesn't really matter where the fielders are. You're just kind of saying, okay, I'm going to hit it over the top of the infield here, and hopefully it goes to the boundary. But if you're going to be playing safe, trying to hit the ball on the ground, then you have to be aware, where are the fielders at, where are the gaps, and where can I target based on my strengths and where I think this bowler is going to bowl and how they've been bowling. So when you watch a game of cricket and you see a batsman just playing the ball into different areas, and it looks like, man, that captain's not that great. This batsman just keeps, hitting it through that gap. Why doesn't he move the fielders? Just know the captain may be moving the fielders, but every time you move a fielder, you open up a new gap. And if a batsman's really good, they can move the ball 5 feet in either direction. So if you move the fielder 5 feet one way, they'll just hit it 5 feet the other way, and vice versa. And so you don't really want to be chasing the batsman, so to speak, where they hit the ball one place and you move a fielder there. Then they hit it another place and you move a fielder there. And if you're being dictated to by the batsman, it's never going to go well, because great batsmen will move the field constantly, because they can place the ball wherever they want if they're comfortable. So the bowler and the fielders and the captain's job is to force the batsman to play shots they're not comfortable with, and to play the ball into areas they're not as familiar with, so that there's more likelihood of a mistake. And also, just for batting, if you're looking at a stat sheet, we'll go over that in a couple episodes from now, reading a scorecard or a box score. But some of the stats you may hear about: strike rate, average. Strike rate is just how many runs do you score per 100 balls that you face. So I guess the formula would be number of runs over number of balls times 100. And so you want that to be over 100 usually. In T20 cricket, 100%. You want it to be like 120 to 140 or higher. In one-day cricket, keeping it around 100 is usually fine. If you come in later in the innings, you'll want it to be higher, obviously, but you kind of want to keep your strike rate at about a run a ball, which is 100. And then in test match cricket, strike rates are usually around 40 to 60. So around 40 runs to 60 runs per 100 balls. And, that's just because the length of the game, you don't need to score as fast. And wickets are more precious, and so you don't want to take as many risks, because your wicket means a lot more. You don't want to just throw it away cheaply. And then a batter's average is simple, just how many runs they score per time that they get out. Because sometimes you don't get out, right? If you're chasing down a score and you chase it down and the game ends, well, you were not out right at the end of the game, and so that doesn't count against your average. You get those runs, but you don't divide by that game, right? You divide by the number of times you've gotten out. So in T20 cricket, averages don't really mean as much as strike rates, because you want to hit fast. Not as much like if you averaged 50 in T20 cricket, it wouldn't mean very much if your strike rate was 100, because you'd be batting too slow. So a lot of averages usually range in the mid-20s to low 30s in T20 cricket, because batsmen are taking more risks and they're more likely to get out. Whereas in 50-over cricket, it's usually good averages are in the mid-40s, like to 50. Some people average 50 plus, and those are the really good batsmen in one-day cricket. And then the same is true in test cricket. There are some that average 50 to 60. There's maybe like 2 or 3 batsmen I can think of that average, close to 60, 55, 60. The rest are kind of high 40s to 50 are for good, solid batsmen. And then you have some just kind of slightly above average batsmen, I guess, that average like around 40 in test cricket. And then, you have other people that'll average less than that. But anyway, just so you know kind of what the basics are for batsmen, what their averages look like, and what strike rates are, and kind of how those play in different environments, in different match formats. But moving on, I did say that we would talk about wickets and some bowling strategy too. And so we did already mention runouts a little bit and stumpings as types of wickets, but we're going to take some time, try and go through all the different ways that batsmen can get out, including some funny ones or some weird ones. But we'll try and start easy, I guess. So the simplest one, I think, to see is if a batsman gets bowled, right? Getting bowled is when you miss the ball and it hits your wickets, right? And if it hits the wickets and the bail comes off, which is the bails are those two little wooden sticks, I guess, if you want to call them that, on the top of the 3 wickets. The bail has to come off in order for the wickets to be hit. That's like the indicator that the wickets have been hit. So if the bails don't come off, then the batsman's not out, even if the ball hits the wickets. So there have been a few instances of that where maybe the wickets were put in a little bit too far apart, or the ball came in at a weird angle and kind of just hit the wickets and kind of bounced through them, and the bail didn't come off. I've seen that even in international cricket, and when that happens, according to the rules, the batsman is not out. It's not the act of the ball hitting the wickets that means you're out. It's the act of the bails coming off to signify that the ball hit the wickets. And so, yeah, that's a funny little thing that sometimes happens, but very, very, very rarely. So if the ball hits the wickets, the bails come off, then you're out. The next way you can get out is caught. So similar to baseball, you hit the ball, it goes in the air, someone catches it before it hits the ground, you are out. Interestingly, if you edge the ball or kind of foul tip it and it goes through to the wicket keeper, you're also out. And also if you're holding your bat and your gloves are kind of on your bat and the ball hits your gloves and goes through to the wicket keeper or bounces up in the air and someone catches it, you're also out. Your gloves count as part of your bat for that instance. So you'll see a lot of wickets happen with batsmen kind of swinging at the ball and just getting a little nick on it, and it goes to either the wicket keeper, or there are a couple fielders that will stand right next to the wicket keeper looking for balls that will kind of edge for them. And so that's a very common way that batsmen get out. And then obviously runouts we talked about. If you're trying to make a run, you and your buddy and who you're batting with, and you think you can make a run, and the fielder picks it up, throws it, and hits the wickets directly, and your bat is not over that crease line, then you are out because you're not safe. So the fielder can throw the ball and hit the wickets directly, but usually what will happen is they'll just throw it towards the wickets and they'll often miss, and someone, either the wicket keeper at one end or the bowler at the other end, will be there to collect it and hit the wickets with the ball to get you out for a run out. But often runouts will take place when the ball hits the wickets directly. So if the fielder just makes a really good throw and hits the wickets directly, that's often where runouts happen. And so fielding is a very big part of the game. If you have players that are good at fielding, they don't drop catches, they can make incredible stops in the field and good throws to run people out. Those kind of players are very valuable. So sometimes you may overlook that a player's batting average or strike rate or something is not as good as another player's, but their fielding is far better. Sometimes having a good fielder is just worth it because you can put them into tough fielding situations and they can make it happen. But we'll talk about fielding next episode. Another type of wicket is stumped, which we talked about. If the wicketkeeper gathers the ball and sees that the batsman is out of his crease or his little safe line there, he can kind of take the ball and just hit the wickets. And if the batsman's not back in time, then he is out. Also, with runouts and with stumpings, I guess, one thing to note, if for some reason the bails have fallen off, so for instance, you throw the ball, you hit the wickets directly, but the batsman is safe when you hit the wickets and the bails fall off, but now the ball kind of bounces a funny direction and you think you can get another one and you try and run another run. If the fielding team throws the ball to that set of wickets that the bails have fallen off of, they actually have to gather the ball, pick up one of the wickets out of the ground and hit the wicket with it, to indicate we've hit the wicket with the ball. This is the indication. We take one wicket out and we hit the ball with it because the bails are no longer there. So that rarely happens, but it does happen every now and then, and it's a funny little rule to think about. And you may see it happen every now and then, where a player just picks up a stump and hits the ball with it. And you're like, what are you doing? It's like, oh, the bails were off, and so that's what you have to do to get someone out. But moving on, another way to get out is leg before wicket. So this is another pretty common one because you're probably thinking to yourself, well, I could just stand in front of the wickets with my big pads and block it all day in a test match and I'd never get out. It's true, you could do that, but you would get out immediately because there's leg before wicket. So if the ball hits your body before your bat, and it's adjudged by the umpire that that ball would have gone on to hit the wickets, you'll be out. So you can't just be blocking the ball with your body if it would have hit the wickets. And so nowadays, they've instituted challenges mostly for this type of wicket because it's very challenging for an umpire to adjudge would this have hit the wickets or not. And so there are now challenges in cricket, and there's Hawkeye. Like if you've ever watched like tennis, they use Hawkeye to see was the ball in or out. They also use Hawkeye in cricket to figure out if the ball would have hit the wickets based on trajectory and where the ball bounced and how much it spun and everything. And so it's really fun technology. They've had it for years in cricket, and they've used it to adjudge LBW decisions or leg before wicket. So yeah, you'll hear LBW. Someone got out LBW. And so, yeah, that's another common one. If it hits your bat and you like kind of nick it and then it hits your pads, you're fine. You can't get out that way. It's only if it's pad first. If it hits your pad first or any part of your body, really, if you're ducking down and it hits your head, I guess you could potentially get out head before wicket, but it would still be LBW because that's 99% of those will be with your legs, not your shoulder or your head or something. But that being said, you can still get out if it hits your head, and it would have gone on to hit the wickets. And then I guess one of the other ways you can get out that's a more recent one, they just created a rule that if the batsmen are running between the wickets, making runs, and a batsman deviates from his path or like his running line, or you can think of it like the base paths a little bit, but if he's running on a straight line and then he deviates to like block a ball that's being thrown at the wickets or just being thrown in general, he can get out for obstruction. And so I don't think there was like a huge problem with this, but they just introduced this rule in the last few years, and so I've seen a few batsmen get out for obstruction where they block the ball. But if they just keep running in a straight line and they don't deviate and it hits them, that's fine. But if they deviate and it hits them, then they'll be ruled out as well. So I haven't seen that too much recently, but they introduced the rule a few years ago, and there were a few high-profile cases of obstruction wickets, and then now it's kind of died down a little bit. But yeah, those are the bulk of the wickets right there that you can take. And so looking at bowling strategy is very, I guess, similar to baseball. You just kind of want to have good control. You want to be able to put the ball in a certain area, and you want to put the ball in an area where the batsman's going to be most uncomfortable. And so that's going to vary based on the match state. Does the batsman need to score quickly now? Can he score slowly? If he needs to score quickly, sometimes the best way to make them uncomfortable is just by not allowing them to score, just putting it right, on their toes, or trying to just stop them from scoring, even if maybe they're pretty good at scoring runs in that area, or they're more comfortable, like kind of not getting out to those kind of balls. You're still putting pressure on them because they're not scoring. So even if you're not getting them out, you're still doing a good job. Whereas in a test match where they have all day, if you're not bowling aggressively and you're just bowling to kind of what they're comfortable with, and yeah, they're not scoring, but you're also not getting them out, and you're getting tired, and they're just going to be there all day. And then in the afternoon session, when all the bowlers are tired, they're going to start dispatching you, and the ball's not as new. Then, so there's a little bit of different strategy. How aggressive am I going to be? Am I bowling to not give up runs? Am I bowling to take wickets? What are those differences? Bowling to take wickets may be putting some fielders further out if batsmen are being aggressive, and maybe giving them a couple of soft ones, or one maybe in an area that they think they can hit, but getting it to deviate a little bit on the bounce, and trying to just get them to not middle it right and hit it too high, or just not hit it solidly and get caught on the boundary. You may see bowlers often trying to aim for the toes just because it's hard to dig those out and get runs. Like you can defend it if you keep pounding it in towards their toes, they can defend it, but it's hard for them to get runs that way. And so in 20 over cricket, you'll see a lot of that towards the end of the game, especially. The only risk with that is if you try and do that and you put it at that very like full length, then if you miss it and you actually give them what's called a full toss, right? If the ball doesn't bounce before it gets to the batsman, that's called a full toss. And that's a very easy ball to hit, because if it doesn't bounce, that gets rid of half of the strategy in the batsman's mind. His mind doesn't even have to adjust to, okay, it's going to bounce there, and then it's probably going to bounce this high, and then I need to hit it. It's just, oh, it's right there, I'm just going to hit it. And it makes it far easier. So there's a risk reward there for the bowler. Yes, if you get what's called a Yorker, which is a ball right on their toes, then that's great. They're probably not going to score any. But if you end up giving them a full toss, it's probably going to the boundary. And so it's a little bit of a risk reward scenario there. But also looking at bowling strategy, a lot of it comes down to length as well. Line and length. You'll hear that a lot in cricket when it comes to bowlers. Line refers to the I guess if you're looking at the cricket pitch, kind of straight on, line is kind of left to right. Where am I going? Left to right. What line am I on? Am I bowling on a middle stump line, right? A ball that's kind of aimed right at that middle wicket. Or am I bowling an off stump line, which is, off stump depends on if it's a left or right-handed batsman. But for a right-handed batsman, off stump would be the left wicket. An off stump line, or a leg stump line, which would be the right wicket for a right-handed batsman. Those are the lines. Or outside off stump line, a fourth stump line, which there is not a fourth stump, but fourth stump is usually, the fourth wicket, I guess, is kind of like an imaginary one that would, that you can kind of imagine in your mind just to the left of that one, that sometimes bowlers will aim for, because it forces batsmen into this indecision zone where it's like, is this going to hit my wickets? Do I need to play a shot at this, or can I just leave this? And then they sometimes prod at it and get a little edge on it. So line is kind of left to right, whereas the ball going length is forward and backward. So does it bounce high? Do I do a short length where it bounces pretty high up and the batsman may have to duck? Or do I bowl it at a full length, which is almost on their toes, right? So you go full versus short, and then you have a good length, you have back of a length, and, a lot of different, variations in there of length. And so line and length, if you think of it like a grid, then you can create certain spots that you're trying to hit line and length, trying to hit, a full length on middle stump would be, a little square right there on their toes on middle stump, right? And so talking about different lines and different lengths, you can kind of communicate to a bowler where you want them to bowl. If you're the captain and you've been setting a field, you can say, I want you to bowl here, here, there. But yeah, so short lengths, when the ball is bowled short, the batsman has to adjust. They usually will get on their back foot and play a shot from their back foot, whereas if it's full, they can step toward the ball on their front foot and kind of drive through the ball. And so that just, depending on the line and the length, it will change how the batsman plays, what kind of shots they can play. And so good bowlers are bowlers that can constantly hit a good line and length, like consistently. They have good control, and they also have variation, but they also have good control of their balls or of their deliveries. Also, looking at bowling strategy, you can bowl over the wicket or around the wicket, which you may hear talked about, and all that means is which side of the wickets are they running up on. So for a right-handed bowler, if they run up to the left of the wickets, which is what they'll do probably 99% of the time, that's over the wicket, because the arm that they're bowling the ball with is kind of coming over those wickets. Their right arm is kind of coming over those wickets next to them on their right, whereas around the wicket would be if they were to bowl from the other side. And so now, their arm's kind of coming around those wickets. And so there's no, you can bowl from either side. It just kind of depends. Maybe if you're bowling to a left-handed batsman, you might come around the wicket to get a different angle. But normally, bowlers will bowl over the wicket. And so for left-arm bowlers, it's the opposite, right? Over the wicket is if they come to the right of the wickets, and then if they come around the left of the wickets, that's around the wicket. And again, that just adds more strategy. Do I start coming around the wicket because this batsman doesn't like that angle of the ball? He doesn't like playing shots, to this part of the field. And if I come around the wicket, maybe I can get a different angle, a different look that mixes him up a little bit, gets him to think a little bit more, and then I can get him out. So you may see that a little bit more in Test match cricket, where the bowling strategy kind of takes place over a longer period of time. But that's just another element of bowling strategy: finding your line, finding your length, which side of the wickets are you coming from, are you coming around, are you coming over, and then just looking at your field and trying to bowl to that as well. Also, speaking about bowling, we talked about runs, we talked about batsmen and how they can score runs. Another way that batsmen score runs, or that a team scores runs, not the batsmen themselves, is from extras. And I know I mentioned extras a little bit, but I'm going to kind of talk about them a little bit more now. So extras are either if the ball is bowled too wide, and so it's adjudged that the batsman couldn't hit it, or it bounces too high, and it's adjudged that the batsman couldn't really hit it, then that will be called wide. So you'll see those two little white crease lines to the left and right of the wickets where the bowler is bowling to, and if the ball goes past the wickets outside of those lines, that will be a wide. In one-day cricket or 20-over cricket, so 20 or 50-over cricket, if the ball goes past the legs of the batsman really at all, it's going to be a wide. So you can't really bowl past their legs at all. Whereas in Test match cricket, if you bowl past their legs, there's a lot more room for error, just because the bowlers are supposed to be the aggressors in Test match cricket. And so if they're just bowling down the legs all the time, the batsman's like, I'm not scoring any runs, but I'm never going to get out this way. So, you waste your energy bowling down there as much as you want. But that being said, wides, if it's too wide, the batting team gets one run. So that run is not given to any batsman. It just gets put in its own little category called extras. It's not given to any batsman, but it is given to the overall team score. And then that ball has to be re-bowled. So when we say an over is 6 legal deliveries, that means 6 balls that are not wide, or 6 balls that don't contain an extra. So you may bowl 10 balls in an over if you bowl 4 extras, right? But that's why we say 6 legal deliveries. So wides, if it's too wide, or if it bounces and bounces too high, and if the batsman were to be standing up straight and the ball still would have gone over their head, then that is a wide. Another form of extra is if the ball hits the batsman's leg or body, and the batsman take a run, but he didn't hit it with the bat. Those are called byes. And byes are just extras because the batsman didn't hit it. So it can hit his body and go for 4, or hit his body and they run 2. You'll just put byes in the extras column too, because the batsman didn't hit it, so he doesn't get credit for those runs. Batsmen only get credit for runs that come off the bat. And so that's why extras are their own category. The team still gets the runs, the overall team score goes up, but the individual batsman does not. So you'll have leg byes if it hits your body and you run some runs. Then actual byes, so I was wrong. Leg byes is if it hits your body or your legs or something and you run. Byes are if the bowler bowls a legal delivery and the wicketkeeper just misses the ball and the batsmen get 4 runs or run 2 or whatever. Those are byes. Now, in the instance of leg byes and byes, those are both legal deliveries that were bowled. And And so the bowler does not have to re-bowl that ball. Just because the wicketkeeper missed the ball doesn't mean the bowler has to bowl it again. And so now if the bowler bowls a wide and the wicketkeeper misses it and it goes for 4, then the batting team gets 4 runs. They get 5 wides because they get 1 run for the wide and then 4 runs because it went for 4. So they actually get 5 wides, plus the bowler has to re-bowl it. So there's a distinction between byes, which is where the wicketkeeper misses it, but it was a good ball, versus wides, where if it's too wide and then the wicketkeeper misses it, you can't just be like, oh, that's byes, he missed it. No, you bowled it wide, that's why he missed it. You need to re-bowl that one. And then there are no balls. So I think we talked a little bit about the bowler. When they bowl, they have to have part of their foot behind that crease line. And if part of their foot is not behind that line, then that's a no ball, what's called a front foot no ball. And they have to re-bowl that ball. The batting team gets a run. And in 20 over cricket and 50 over cricket, that re-bowled ball is what's known as a free hit. So the umpire will signal it, and then that means that on the next ball they cannot get out caught or run out, or they can't get out caught or bowled or leg before wicket or anything like that. The only ways they can get out are stumped and run out, because obviously if they couldn't get out those ways, they would just run for the rest of the game. And so so front foot no balls are a killer, especially in one-day international cricket and 20 over cricket. In test match cricket, the bowler just re-bowls the ball, that just like a wide. But also with no balls, on the actual no ball delivery, like the ball that they bowled while stepping over, the batsman can't get out either. So if it's similar to it's the same as the free hit, that they can only get out, run out, or stumped. They can't get out caught or anything, which is very disappointing when a bowler bowls and the batsman hits it and they get caught, but then you look at the umpire and he's signaling no ball because you overstepped. Very frustrating. So it's always good to limit extras. That's always a good team will be a team that limits extras, limits fielding mistakes, little things like that. But extras are very killer, because if you give the other team 20 extras, that's basically giving them an extra batsman, and giving them 10 extra balls to face, or whatever. And so it's not great. So the teams that can keep it tight are usually the teams that do pretty well. And so then another no ball is if you bowl the ball and it does not bounce and it passes or reaches the batsman at or above waist height, then that will be a no ball. The batsman cannot get out on that ball except run out or stumped, but they don't have to re-bowl. Or they do have to re-bowl the ball, but it's not a free hit in any format. So it's just kind of like a wide. They have to re-bowl that one. The batting team gets a free run. But it's the same as a wide. They just re-bowl it, but there's no free hit. The free hit is only if they overstep with their front foot over that crease when they're bowling. So those are some extras. So that's kind of the last way that the batting team gets runs. The only other weird way the batting team gets runs is sometimes a wicketkeeper will have a helmet on when they're facing a slower bowler like a spinner. And when that happens, sometimes they'll alternate between the helmet and the cap, right? Because if they're facing a faster bowler, standing further away, they can just wear a cap. But if they're really close, they might wear a helmet just for safety. And they don't want to keep running the helmet on and off the field every over. So they'll leave the helmet kind of behind the wicketkeeper on the ground. And if the ball, for any reason, hits that helmet on the ground, the batting team is awarded 5 penalty runs. So that rarely happens, but it can. So just so you know, that's another way that batting team can get runs. But again, rarely happens. Extras, pretty common. 4s, 6s, 1s, 2s, and 3s. Those are all, pretty common ways that batsmen will get runs. But bowling strategy, limiting extras, keeping the runs down while trying to get wickets. In 20 over cricket, keeping the runs down is probably more important than getting wickets, although a good way to get the runs down is by getting the best batsman out. So there is a little bit of a push and pull there. Whereas in test match cricket, you just want to get wickets. So you're trying to be as aggressive as possible. The fielders are all pretty close in, looking for catches. which means that if the batsman decides to go over the top, it's pretty easy for them to find 4 runs if they want it. But then that's a risk they're taking to try and, get some runs. And so Test match cricket, the bowling strategy is a lot more aggressive than in T20 or 50 over cricket. Whereas in those formats, it's the batsmen that are kind of the aggressors. But if you're looking at bowling, you're looking at bowler stats and then you're thinking about what are they going for. It's often you'll see economy rate is mentioned, which is essentially the number of runs that they give up per over that they bowl. So per 6 ball over that they bowl, how many runs do they give up? A good economy rate in Test match cricket. Again, in Test match cricket, economy rate's not as important because they're not scoring runs as fast. But in 20 over cricket, it's usually around 7 to 8 is usually pretty good, even though that sounds like a lot, which it is. The batsmen have gotten a lot better at scoring runs these days, and so 7 to 8 is pretty good, pretty standard. Anything under that is really good. One-day cricket, 6 runs and over is usually kind of the average. You kind of want to be a little bit below that if you want to be a good bowler who keeps it tight. That's just what people say when a bowler doesn't give up many runs. They keep it tight and get wickets. There's also a strike rate. So if you remember batsman strike rate, how many runs do they get per 100 balls they face on average? Whereas a bowler's strike rate is how many balls do they take to get a wicket. So basically the number of balls they bowl divided by the number of wickets they've taken, and that will give you a bowler's strike rate. And that's more important in Test match cricket. So in the shorter formats, strike rate, they might show you a bowler's strike rate, but it's not as impressive as in Test match cricket. If a bowler has like a strike rate of like 40, you're like, oh my goodness, this guy's incredible. Or 30, like I don't think anyone has a strike rate like of 35 or 30, but because there's no bowler who's getting a ball every 5 overs or getting a wicket every 5 overs. So bowlers have strike rates too. They also have an average, which is how many runs do they give up per wicket. So kind of that strike rate and average for a batsman play together to see, well, how many runs do you get per wicket as a batsman, but then how fast do you score those runs? And the same is true of a bowler in Test match cricket. You may find the bowler, they get a lot of wickets quickly, so their strike rate might be low, but then they give up a lot of runs to get those wickets, so then their average might be a little bit higher, and vice versa. They may have a low average, but they just don't get many wickets, so they keep it tight, they don't give up many runs, but they also don't get many wickets, so their average is low, but their strike rate is higher. And so kind of seeing those two numbers in tandem for Test match cricket is very important. But again, we'll talk about statistics and scorecards and stuff in a couple episodes from now. But that's just kind of a quick overview of bowling strategy and kind of what the bowlers are looking to do, line and length, where they're trying to put the ball, where they're trying to bait the batsman into indecision zones and trying to get the batsman to play out of their comfort zone. Whereas the batsmen are trying to look at the field, find the gaps, hit the ball into the gaps or over the top, depending on what's needed, how many runs they still need to get, if they're chasing, etc. And so, that's all I've got today. This was a long one. This was involved, but thanks for sticking it out. And next week we'll get into fielding, fielding strategy, field settings, different field positions, talking about the leg side, the offside, and talking a little bit about over allocations, what the captain, will come back to the captain because he'll be the one to allocate the bowlers overs, he'll be the one to move the field around mostly and kind of set the strategy on the field. So we'll talk about that next time, but here's some news of the week in the world of cricket. Looking at the top stories in cricket news this week, again, it's kind of a lull in the cricket season. We're in between the southern hemisphere summer that runs from like October through February and the northern hemisphere summer, which runs from about May to August, September. And so since cricket is a summer sport, we're kind of in a little bit of a lull when it comes to international series and matches. So for right now, all we've really got is the IPL. So Indian Premier League, just recap this week. We saw the Chennai Super Kings, with 0 wins, come back and pick up 2 out of the last 3, and they almost won 3 out of their last 3, and 2 of those were against the top 2 teams, Gujarat and Bangalore, who are both tied on 10 points. So maybe Chennai, a little bit of a resurgence here in the middle part of the season. MS Dhoni with a good finishing innings in the last match for them, along with Dwayne Pretorius to get them a win and to pull them out of a tough spot against Mumbai. But then over in England, we have first-class cricket. So first class means like 4-day cricket usually. So it's like a longer version, but it's not a test match. Test match is reserved for international matches only that go 5 days. So first class is like the lower version of that. It's like club cricket, but they play 4 days usually, partially so that they can get more matches in, but also it makes it a little bit more exciting when you have 4 days, because it forces teams to be a little bit more aggressive if they want to avoid a draw. So there we see some of the scores from those matches currently, and so the English season is well underway. But other than that, not much else going on in the world of cricket currently. Looking to the future, Sri Lanka will be touring Bangladesh in May. West Indies will be in the Netherlands. South Africa will tour India in June. India will tour Ireland in June, and then New Zealand goes to England, Ireland, and Scotland in June and July, before Australia is in Sri Lanka June, July, and then South Africa goes to England for a big series July through September. So we will get some international cricket. It will just be 2 or 3 weeks from now. So until then, we'll be fine watching the 20-over cricket in the IPL and watching some 4-day cricket in the English County Championship. But that being said, that's all from me for this week. I'll catch you next time.